The young princess stood at the edge of the palace balcony, staring at the horizon. Her world stretched far beyond what any human could imagine. Skies that shimmered in colors she could never name, and lands that curved in ways that made the eye dizzy. Her palace was massive, carved from crystals that glowed faintly in the sunlight, and towers that seemed to touch the clouds. From above, the gardens looked like living paintings, with flowers that changed color with the wind and streams that sang soft songs as they wound through the land. Yet for all its beauty, the princess felt a deep emptiness inside her chest. She had been raised to be strong, smart and graceful, the perfect heir to her people. But the truth was, no one understood her, and no one truly wanted her as she was. Alien suitors had come from worlds near and far, each presenting gifts, promises, and compliments that felt hollow to her. Some admired her appearance, some were drawn to her intelligence, but all eventually left disappointed. They could not see beyond her form, nor could they handle the strength of her mind. It had been like this for years, and with every failed meeting, her heart grew heavier. Every morning she would wake to the soft hum of the palace, the gentle footsteps of servants, and the distant calls of alien birds. She went through her routines wearing the finest robes, attending lessons on diplomacy and history, and walking the gardens with advisors who reminded her of protocol. The palace was alive with people, yet she felt more alone than ever. Conversations with the servants were her only comfort, and even then she had to be careful. They treated her with respect, but respect was not the same as friendship. On this particular day, the princess wandered farther than usual, slipping past the guards who knew better than to interfere. She liked to explore the edges of her world, where the crystal pathways ended and the forests began. Here, the air was thick with the smell of strange plants, and the ground was soft beneath her feet. She walked for hours, listening to the wind through the trees, watching small creatures dart through the underbrush. It was in these moments she felt closest to freedom. Here, she could think without the weight of expectation pressing down on her shoulders. Her loneliness was not just about companionship. It was about understanding. It's about finding someone who could look at her and see her as she truly was. Not as a princess, not as a symbol, but as a person. She remembered the last suitor, a tall alien with eyes that glimmered like molten metal. He had complimented her intelligence at first, but quickly grew bored when she asked questions he could not answer. Another had praised her beauty, but recoiled when she expressed curiosity about the world beyond their planets. Each encounter reminded her that her people valued form over substance, tradition over heart. Even her own family struggled to connect with her. Her parents loved her, no doubt, but their love was wrapped in duty and ceremony. Her siblings, though kind, were caught up in their own lives, marrying, training, and visiting distant worlds. The princess often wondered if anyone in the universe could truly understand the restless thoughts inside her head as she walked through the forest. She stumbled upon a clearing she had never seen before. The sunlight fell through the gaps in the trees in patterns that looked like silver ribbons. Flowers bloomed here in colors that seemed almost impossible, and a small pond reflected the sky like a mirror. She knelt by the water, watching her reflection shift with the gentle ripples. "Is there anyone out there who could understand me?" she whispered to herself, though she knew no one would hear. Time passed, and the princess lost herself in thought. She wondered about other worlds, about the endless possibilities beyond her own. What was it like for people who did not care about titles or bloodlines? Could there be a life where she could simply be herself, without the weight of expectation? These thoughts filled her with a mixture of hope and sadness, a bittersweet feeling she had carried for as long as she could remember. Back in the palace, rumors swirled about the princess's loneliness. Advisors whispered that perhaps she was too different. Her mind and spirit were too unusual for any alien suitor to handle. Some wondered if she would ever marry, if she would ever find someone who could stand beside her as an equal. The princess did not care about the rumors. She did not want just anyone. She wanted someone who could see her, really see her, and still choose to stay. That evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the palace, the princess returned to her chambers. She ate little, preferring to sit by her window and watch the stars. Her world was vast, but each star seemed distant and untouchable. She traced constellations that told stories of great heroes and ancient loves, wondering if any of those tales could ever be hers. She wanted a story that was real, that mattered, that was hers too, right? Days passed, each one blending into the next, filled with lessons, meetings, and polite interactions with suitors who could not see her heart. She smiled when she had to, laughed when expected, and nodded through conversations that bored her. Yet, beneath the mask of duty, she dreamed of someone who would look at her not with expectation, but with curiosity. Someone who would not care about her title, her palace, or her world, but simply care about her. Late at night, when the palace was quiet and the glow from the crystal walls dimmed, she would wander again, slipping past guards and through hidden doors. She knew every secret path, every hidden garden, every quiet stream. These were her moments of freedom, her moments of peace. She whispered to the wind, imagining that one day, someone might walk these paths with her. Someone who would understand the joy of the small things, the sound of water over stones, the feel of wind on skin, the scent of unknown flowers. Her life had been full of expectations, full of rules and full of people who looked but did not see. And yet, despite everything, she held on to hope. She believed deep down that the universe was larger than any palace, any rule, any tradition. Somewhere, somehow, there was a person who would not just look at her surface, but dive into the depths of who she was. Someone who would stay no matter what. On this particular night, as she sat by her favorite pond in the palace gardens, she did something unusual. She closed her eyes and made a silent promise. I will not settle for anything less than someone who truly understands me. I will wait for them, no matter how long it takes. The stars reflected in the water, shimmering like countless eyes watching her resolve. She felt a strange sense of peace. Though the young princess was alone in the vast palace, alone in a world of beauty that few could comprehend, she was not without hope. Somewhere out there, beyond the mountains, the forests, and the rivers, her story was waiting to change, and she would be ready when that moment came to embrace it fully. For now, she returned to her chambers, carrying the quiet strength that had always been inside her. She laid her head on the pillow, listening to the faint hum of the palace and the whispers of the wind outside her window. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, nor did she know who would cross her path. But she knew this. She would never stop searching for someone who could see her for who she truly was. And perhaps one day, someone would appear completely unexpected. Who could change everything? The princess had returned to her usual routine after another quiet night in the palace. The halls bustled with activity as servants polished the crystal floors. Advisors whispered behind closed doors, and the distant sounds of alien birds filled the air. She moved among it all with a practiced smile. Though her heart still felt the weight of solitude, it was during one of her afternoon walks in the outer gardens, the part of the palace few visited, that something unusual happened. She had wandered past the familiar paths, past the shimmering flower beds and the crystal fountains, into a small valley that dipped below the palace walls. Here, the air smelled different, fresher somehow, carrying hints of soil and rain instead of polished stone and exotic perfumes. And there, in the soft light of the setting suns, she saw someone she had never expected, a human. He looked completely out of place in her world, with skin that seemed fragile compared to the alien inhabitants she was used to, and clothes that were simple and worn. His eyes were wide, full of wonder, as he took in the sights around him. For a moment, neither of them moved. The princess felt a strange mix of curiosity and caution. She had seen many visitors from distant worlds, but a human? That was something rare, almost unheard of. The human stumbled slightly over a root and almost fell. The princess instinctively stepped forward, catching him by the arm. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. He looked up at her, surprise flashing across his face. I think so," he replied, his accent strange but understandable. He glanced around, clearly overwhelmed. "Where am I?" "This is my world," she said carefully. "It is private. You should not be here. Her tone carried authority, but she could not hide the curiosity that sparkled in her eyes. She had never met anyone like him before. The human blinked, taking a deep breath. I didn't mean to intrude. I came from far away. I didn't know this place existed until recently. He paused, as if weighing his words. I didn't mean any harm. The princess studied him. There was something different about him. He was not like the alien visitors who came to impress her or to gain favor. He did not seem afraid of her presence, nor was he intimidated by her title. He looked at her simply, as if she were a person, not a princess or a symbol. That alone made him interesting. You are a human, she said after a moment. No one from your kind has come here in generations. He nodded, a hint of nervousness in his smile. I am. My world is far from here, and I did not expect to find anyone here who would speak to me. For the first time in a long while, the princess felt something stir inside her. A small spark of connection. She gestured for him to follow her down the valley. Come, you should not be here alone. There are dangers in the forests beyond the gardens. He followed without hesitation, matching her pace. As they walked, he looked around in awe. This place, it's incredible. I've never seen anything like it. The colors, the shapes, everything is alive. The princess smiled faintly. It is my home. Few get to see it. Most visitors only see the palace, the formal areas, the parts that are polished and perfect. You are not like them. He glanced at her. I suppose I am not trying to impress anyone. His words were simple, but there was honesty in them, and that honesty made the princess pause. They reached a small clearing near a stream, where the sunlight danced on the water's surface. The human knelt to touch the water, letting it run through his fingers. It's beautiful, he said softly. It is, she agreed. She sat on a nearby stone, her eyes on him as he explored the clearing. Tell me, why have you come here? Was it curiosity or accident? He laughed quietly, a sound that made her feel lighter than she had in years. A bit of both, I suppose. I was exploring, as humans often do, looking for something new. I didn't expect to find a place like this, and certainly not to meet someone like you. The princess's heart beat a little faster. Someone like me? She asked. Yes, he said, looking up at her. Someone real. Someone who seems like they are not pretending to be what everyone wants them to be. The words hit her in a way that she had not felt before. No alien suitor had ever said anything like that. They had complimented her, flattered her, or tried to charm her, but none had ever seen her, truly seen her, the way this human had. She felt a sudden urge to ask him more, to know everything about him, but she restrained herself. Curiosity was dangerous when combined with desire, and she had learned to guard her heart. You are far from home, she said carefully. How will you survive here, this world? It is not easy for humans. He smiled, a small, genuine smile that reached his eyes. I can manage. I have learned to adapt. Besides, I am not alone anymore. He looked at her then, and for a moment, the world felt as if it had stopped around them. The princess turned her gaze away, unsure of how to respond. Her heart raced, but she reminded herself to remain cautious. She had been disappointed so many times before. She could not let herself hope too quickly. Over the next few days, the human stayed in the outer gardens under her watchful eye. Palace guards were uneasy, unsure of what to make of him, but the princess insisted on keeping him close. She found herself talking to him more than anyone else, sharing stories of her childhood, her studies, and even her fears. He listened without judgment. He did not interrupt or offer empty advice. He asked questions, curious and respectful, and she found herself opening up in ways she had not with any alien suitor or even her own family. With him, she could be herself, not a princess bound by rules, but a person with thoughts, dreams, and doubts. One afternoon, they walked along the banks of a quiet river that ran through the palace grounds. The human pointed out small insects and plants, asking questions and marveling at the details. The princess laughed at his fascination, sound she rarely let herself make. "You see the world differently than I do?" she said, her voice light but thoughtful. "I see it with new eyes because you are showing it to me," he replied. "You make it come alive in ways I could never imagine on my own." She stopped walking and looked at him, surprised by the depth of his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever made her feel that her presence mattered so much. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of hope. The days turned into weeks, and their bond grew stronger. The palace staff whispered, some in awe and some in disapproval. Rumors spread of the princess spending time with the strange human, who seemed so different from anyone they had ever seen. Some feared that he was dangerous, that his presence could disrupt the careful order of the palace. Others simply shook their heads, wondering if the princess had finally found someone who could reach her heart. The princess, however, did not care about the whispers. For the first time, she felt seen, and that was more valuable than any title, any suitor, or any ceremonial duty. She found herself looking forward to each day, eager to see him, to hear his thoughts, and to share her own. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, the princess and the human sat on the balcony of the outer palace wing. She pointed to the horizon. "That land over there," she said, "is where few dare to go. I have explored it many times, but it feels different when I am with you." He nodded, following her gaze. "It is vast and beautiful. But what makes it truly special is who you are. You are different. Not just because you are a princess, but because you see the world and you let it touch you." Her heart warmed at his words. She had spent so long believing that no one could understand her, and yet here he was, a stranger, from another world, showing her that understanding was possible. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future that included someone else, not a suitor, not a guest, but a companion. Someone who would walk beside her, not because of duty, but because of choice. Someone who would share in the quiet moments, the dangers, the laughter, and the wonder of life in a world so vast and strange. And though she did not yet know where this bond would lead, she felt a sense of excitement she had never felt before. The human was no longer just a visitor, was someone who had touched her heart in a way that no one else ever had, someone who might change everything. As night fell, the palace lights flickered like distant stars, and the young princess realized that her life, once filled with loneliness and expectation, might finally be beginning to change. She looked at the human beside her and thought, with a quiet certainty, that perhaps the universe had brought him here for a reason. For the first time in years, she felt that the impossible might be possible, that someone from another world, someone so different, could understand her, accept her, and even choose to stay. And in that moment, beneath the twin moons and endless skies, the princess dared to hope. The days passed differently now. The princess no longer wandered the outer gardens alone. Human had become a constant presence, following her along hidden paths, exploring forests, streams, and valleys few had ever seen. What had begun as curiosity slowly turned into a bond neither of them could ignore. They discovered hidden corners of the palace grounds where crystal flowers glowed only at night. The human was fascinated by their light, reaching out gently, as if not to harm them. And the princess laughed softly at his wonder. "You were gentle with everything," she said one evening, as they walked along a narrow stream. "Even the smallest things do not escape your notice." "I notice because I care," he replied simply, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "It's not just the flowers, but the world itself in you." The princess felt her chest tighten. Words like that had been spoken to her before, by alien suitors, but they had always felt forced, hollow, or designed to impress. These words were different. They carried weight, honesty, and a kind of warmth she had almost forgotten existed. Over time, she began to show him parts of her life that she had never shared with anyone. The palace's hidden archives, filled with histories of her people. The secret passages through forests, and the quiet chambers where she had once retreated to think alone. She found herself speaking freely, telling him about her fears, her dreams, and the pressure of being a princess who no one could satisfy. The human listened. Always, he asked questions, not to judge, not to advise, but to understand. And in his presence, the princess felt seen, truly seen. She no longer had to hide behind the polite smiles or the formal words expected of her. One morning they ventured to the edge of the northern cliffs. The wind whipped through their hair, and the views stretched endlessly, showing mountains that glowed faintly with mineral light and valleys filled with swirling mists. The princess felt a thrill of freedom. She had been here before, but always alone, always wishing for someone to share the sight with. "This is beautiful," the human said, his voice nearly drowned by the wind. He stepped closer to the edge, careful but steady. "But it's not the beauty of the cliffs or the mountains that matters. It's the person I share it with." The princess felt her heart lurch. She had spent so long believing that companionship would be impossible for her, that no one could understand her world and mind. And yet, here was someone who did both, without hesitation, without expectation. As they walked back to the palace, she noticed small changes in him. He was learning to move through her world with ease, noticing the hidden dangers, understanding the language of her people, and respecting the traditions without letting them crush his own spirit. And she, in turn, was learning from him, seeing her own world through fresh eyes, noticing details she had once taken for granted, and finding joy in the simplest moments. One evening, they found themselves in the crystal gardens, where the glowing plants cast soft light over the paths. The human knelt beside a plant she had always thought of as ordinary, examining the leaves with care. "Even small things have life," he said quietly. "Even things we overlook are important if we take the time to see them." The princess felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She had spent her life surrounded by wealth, grandeur, and status, yet only now did she feel the depth of life in her world. And only now did she feel the warmth of connection with another being. Their friendship deepened as they explored together. They found hidden caves where the walls shimmered with natural crystals, and they learned to listen to the songs of streams that ran underground. They raced across fields of soft grass, laughing like children, and shared quiet nights beneath the stars, speaking of everything and nothing at once. But it was not always easy. There were times when misunderstandings arose, when the humans struggled to understand alien customs, and when the princess had to explain why certain actions were dangerous or forbidden. Yet each challenge strengthened their bond because neither walked away. They listened, they learned, and they adjusted. Trust grew, and with trust came something deeper, a sense of safety, a feeling that neither would be abandoned. One afternoon they discovered a small valley, hidden from all paths and maps. The valley was full of unusual flowers and trees, and a small stream wound through it, clear and cold. The human knelt by the water, tossing pebbles and watching the ripples expand. "Do you ever get lonely?" he asked suddenly, not looking at her. The princess hesitated. She had not expected the question. "I did," she admitted softly. "For so long I thought no one could understand me. I thought, perhaps I was meant to be alone." He glanced up at her, eyes full of understanding. "You don't have to be alone anymore," he said simply. "Not with me." The princess felt warmth spread through her chest. It was one thing to be understood, another to be accepted, another to be chosen. And here, in this hidden valley, she felt both. They spent hours there, speaking quietly, sharing stories of their lives. The princess told him about the alien suitors who had tried and failed to impress her, the pressure of the palace, and the fear that she would never find someone who truly cared for her as she was. The human shared stories of his world, of humans who struggled to see beyond appearances, the small joys and sorrows that made life meaningful. Through these conversations, they learned from each other. The human discovered that the world of the princess was not just beautiful, but complex, full of rules and history and unseen dangers. The princess learned that humans, though seemingly fragile and ordinary, carried resilience, creativity, and compassion that transcended worlds. As the sun set, painting the valley in shades of gold and purple, the princess realized something important. She had been waiting for someone to understand her for years. She had been lonely for longer than she could remember. And now, in the presence of this human, she no longer felt that weight. She felt light-free, alive in a way she had not imagined possible. But she also knew that the world outside, her hidden valley, might not understand this bond. Rumors, gossip, and judgment from the palace were inevitable. She would have to protect this friendship, this connection, if it was to survive. And she would. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope for more. She allowed herself to imagine a life where she could laugh without restraint, explore without fear, and share her world without compromise. And she knew that, whatever challenges came, she would not face them alone. Together they returned to the palace, walking silently under the twin moons that rose in the sky. Each step was a promise unspoken, but understood. They had found trust in each other, and that trust was stronger than any fear or expectation. That night, as the princess lay in her chamber, she thought about the human's words, his kindness, and his patience. She thought about the hidden valleys, the crystal gardens, and the streams they had discovered together. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, a feeling she had not allowed herself to experience for a long time. The human, far from home, and yet somehow at peace, had brought life back into her days. He had reminded her that the universe was bigger than palaces, bigger than rules, bigger than loneliness. And he had shown her that connection, true connection, could cross worlds, species, and expectations. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to dream, not just of adventures, but of companionship. Not just of beauty, but of understanding. Not just of hope, but of trust. And for the first time in her life, she felt that the impossible could be real. The princess had never felt such a mixture of excitement and worry. Every day spent with the human brought joy, laughter, and a sense of freedom. But she knew that their bond was fragile in the eyes of her world. Rumors had already started to swirl through the palace halls. Whispers of her time spent with the human reached the ears of alien suitors and advisors alike. And not all were pleased. One morning, as the princess walked through the formal gardens with the human at her side, a group of advisors approached. Their faces were stern, eyes sharp, and the air around them heavy with disapproval. The human looked at the princess, sensing the tension, but said nothing. He trusted her to handle the situation. The lead advisor spoke first, his voice calm but firm. "Princess, it has come to our attention that you have been spending time with an outsider. A human, no less. You know that this is not permitted." The princess lifted her chin, meeting his gaze without fear. "I am aware of the rules," she said evenly. "But I do not see why his presence harms anyone. He has caused no disruption, no danger, and no offense." Another advisor stepped forward, his expression harder. "It is not only about immediate harm. His presence sets a precedent. Alien suitors may be discouraged from seeking your hand. The palace cannot condone this behavior. Your role as princess requires careful attention to tradition and protocol." The princess's jaw tightened. She had expected objections, but hearing them voiced so plainly made her realize how entrenched the rules were. "My duty is to my people," she said, "but it is also my duty to live with honesty and to make choices that do not betray my own heart. This human, he is not a threat. He is a friend, and I will not be forced to reject him simply to satisfy appearances." The advisors exchanged uneasy glances. Some whispered among themselves, debating the correct course of action. The human remained quiet, observing the conversation with a mixture of respect and caution. He did not speak out of place, but his presence alone challenged the assumptions of those who believed only aliens could be worthy companions. One advisor, older and more respected, finally spoke. "Princess, we do not question your judgment lightly, but you must understand the implications. Your bond with a human will provoke gossip, anger, and perhaps even resentment from neighboring worlds. Are you prepared to face this?" The princess paused, considering the words carefully. She knew the risks, but she also knew the truth in her heart. "I am prepared," she said softly, but firmly. "I will not allow fear of judgment to dictate whom I choose to trust or whom I choose to keep close." The advisors bowed their heads reluctantly, some out of respect, some out of frustration. "Then we leave you to your decisions, princess," the lead advisor said. "But be warned. The world watches, and not all are kind to those who step outside tradition." As the group departed, the human finally spoke, his voice calm but earnest. "Are you all right?" he asked, concern in his eyes. The princess smiled faintly, though her chest still felt heavy. "I am. This was expected, and I am ready. But it will not be easy." He reached out and took her hand gently, a gesture of reassurance. "We face it together," he said. "No matter what others think, I am here." That night, the palace felt different. The usual hum of activity seemed louder, as if the walls themselves were aware of the brewing tension. The princess lay awake, thinking about the advisor's words, about the alien suitors who had already rejected her, and about the humans' place in a world that was not built for them. She knew that the path ahead would be difficult, and yet she felt a determination she had never known. The next day, the whispers had grown louder. Servants watched her more closely, and some of the younger nobles avoided her entirely. One suitor, tall and proud, approached her during the morning ceremony. His eyes were cold, his expression carefully composed. "Princess," he said, voice smooth, "I hear you spend your time with a human now. I wonder if you understand the consequences. Your people expect more." The princess looked at him, calm but unwavering. "I understand perfectly. I also understand my own heart, which is something your kind has never taken the time to see." The suitor's face hardened, but he said no more. He turned away, leaving her with a sense of quiet victory. For the first time, she realized that words, honesty, and courage could stand against rigid tradition. Despite the pressures, she continued to spend time with the human. They explored the outer forests together, finding hidden valleys and quiet rivers. They spoke of dreams, fears, and hopes, and in those moments, the world outside the palace seemed to fade. The princess felt alive, free, and unafraid. But challenges continued to arise. Some palace staff openly questioned the human's presence, suggesting that he was a distraction, or worse, a danger. The princess had to navigate these tensions carefully, balancing her desire to protect him with the expectations of her role. She found herself mediating between the human and the palace, explaining customs, teaching patience, and asking for understanding. One afternoon, as they rested near a crystal stream, the humans spoke quietly. "Do you ever worry that they will never accept me? That the world is too rigid for someone like me?" The princess looked at him, her eyes steady. "I do. But I also know that if I let fear dictate my actions, I will never live fully. You have a place here, not because the palace allows it, but because I choose it. And that choice matters more than any rule." He nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "Then, I will trust your choice. I will face whatever comes with you, if that is what you wish." Her heart swelled at his loyalty. No alien suitor had ever offered such a promise. No one had ever stood beside her with such quiet strength. She realized that the bond they shared was becoming something deeper than friendship. It was a connection that could withstand judgment, fear, and tradition, if only they were brave enough to face it. The palace, however, was not yet ready to accept this bond. Messages arrived from neighboring worlds, questioning the princess's decisions. Some alien dignitaries withdrew their interest in forming alliances. The advisors grew more insistent, warning that continued association with a human could provoke political instability. Yet the princess remained resolute. She continued to meet the human in secret, finding solace in the hidden valleys and crystal forests. They spoke of courage, of loyalty, and of what it meant to stand for one another in a world that did not understand. Each shared secret strengthened their bond, and each shared laugh brought a sense of normalcy she had never felt before. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of color, they stood together on a high cliff overlooking the forest below. The wind whipped through their hair, and the world stretched endlessly before them. The human turned to her, his expression serious. "Whatever comes," he said, "we will face it together. I do not belong to this world, and yet I choose to be here with you." Tears pricked at the princess's eyes, not of sadness, but of relief and gratitude. "And I choose you," she whispered. "Not because it is easy, or because it is expected, but because it is right." They embraced briefly, a quiet promise in a world full of expectation. Around them, the forests whispered, the rivers sang, and the stars began to twinkle above, as if witnessing a bond that defied rules and tradition. In the following days, the palace buzzed with tension. Some advisors continued to disapprove, some servants whispered warnings, and some alien suitors withdrew entirely. But the princess no longer feared their judgment. She had found someone who understood her, someone who valued her for who she was. That was worth any challenge, any confrontation, any risk. Together, they began to navigate the complex world of tradition, expectation, and gossip. They learned patience, compromise, and courage. And slowly, they discovered that trust could be stronger than fear, and connection stronger than judgment. The princess knew that more challenges would come, that not everyone would accept their bond, and that the world outside the palace might never understand. But she also knew that she no longer faced them alone. And for the first time in her life, she felt confident that the bond she had formed with the human could endure anything. As night fell, the princess looked out from her balcony at the glowing palace gardens below. She thought about the adventures she and the human had shared, the dangers they had avoided, and the moments of joy that had filled her days. And she felt a sense of calm determination, no matter what the world demanded. No matter how rigid the rules, she would protect this bond. She would not allow fear, tradition, or expectation to dictate her life. She had found understanding, loyalty, and care in a human stranger, and she would honor that, even if it meant challenging everything she had been taught. And in that quiet moment, beneath the twin moons and endless stars, the princess allowed herself to hope. She hoped for courage, for resilience, and for a future where connection, trust, and love could triumph over fear, judgment, and convention. The tension in the palace had reached a quiet but persistent hum. Whispers moved through the halls like currents of wind, carrying disapproval, speculation, and curiosity. Yet the princess no longer flinched at the sound. She had spent months with the human, and in that time, she had discovered something that no title, no palace, and no suitor could give her: understanding, loyalty, and trust. She knew that the path ahead would be challenging, but she also knew that it was worth it. One morning, as the twin suns rose over the palace spires, the princess met the human in the gardens. He had brought with him a small bundle of tools and papers, things he had collected from his travels to learn about her world and its traditions. His eyes met hers with that same mixture of curiosity and quiet confidence that had drawn her to him months ago. "Good morning," he said simply. "I have been thinking about how we can show them that our bond is not a threat." The princess smiled faintly. "Do you think that is possible?" she asked. "Some of them may never understand." He shrugged, a small, determined smile on his face. "I don't know. But we can try. We can show them that respect, understanding, and care are more powerful than tradition alone." Together, they began to plan. They invited trusted advisors and palace staff to join them in small gatherings, exploring ideas, sharing knowledge, and demonstrating that the human's presence was not disruptive. At first, some resisted. They questioned every word, every gesture, every choice. But slowly, with patience and calm persistence, the human showed that he understood the world he had entered. He learned customs, respected rules, and contributed in ways that mattered. Without pretending to be something he was not, the princess watched him closely, pride swelling in her chest. He was not perfect, but neither was she, and neither needed to be. Their bond was built on authenticity, honesty, and shared effort. And as they worked together, others began to notice. The younger staff, curious and open-minded, began to approach them with questions and interest. Some of the advisors, though still cautious, began to acknowledge that the human's presence did not harm the palace, nor the princess. One evening, as they walked through the crystal gardens, the princess turned to him. "I never expected this," she said softly. "That anyone could understand me, let alone care enough to stand beside me." He smiled, brushing a leaf from her shoulder. "I think the universe has a way of surprising us. I didn't expect to find a world like yours, and I certainly didn't expect to meet someone like you, but I am glad I did." She felt warmth in her chest, a feeling that had grown steadily over months. It was not just affection or trust. It was a quiet certainty that they had found something rare and lasting. Their journey was not without challenges. Some alien suitors still watched from afar, jealous or suspicious. Messages arrived from neighboring worlds, questioning the princess's choices and the implications of her bond with a human. And yet the princess remained steadfast. She had faced fear, judgment, and doubt before. And she had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. One afternoon, a group of the most skeptical advisors requested an audience with her. The princess agreed, and the human accompanied her quietly. They entered the grand hall where light filtered through crystal windows, casting patterns on the polished floors. The advisors' faces were stern, and the atmosphere thick with anticipation. The lead advisor spoke first. "Princess, we have observed your continued association with the human. Some of us remain concerned about the implications for your rule and your alliances." The princess held her head high. "I understand your concern," she said calmly, "but I ask you to look at what you see, not what you fear. This human has shown respect, understanding, and courage. He has learned our ways not to please us, but to understand them. He has proven that kindness and loyalty transcend worlds." The advisors exchanged glances. Some seemed unconvinced, others thoughtful. The human stepped forward, his voice steady but gentle. "I am here because I care for the princess, and I respect her world. I do not wish to disrupt it. I only wish to be part of it in a way that honors your traditions while remaining true to myself." A silence fell over the hall. It was not forced, but heavy with attention. The princess watched the advisors closely. Some had softened, others were still skeptical, but a shift had occurred. They saw honesty, respect, and commitment, qualities that mattered more than appearances or expectation. Finally, the lead advisor nodded. "We cannot deny your sincerity," he said, "nor can we ignore the princess's choice. While some may still struggle to understand, it is clear that your bond does not threaten the palace nor the people. We will allow it, with caution, but with acknowledgement of your mutual commitment."